Hi. I'm sure that most of you have seen Buddipoles. If you haven't, John has one, I have one, and for probably the longest period of time, when we lived in California, we lived in a townhouse, and we literally had no place for antennas. And what I basically did was I put up Buddipoles on my balcony. And then when I wanted to have a lot of fun for a long period of time and dodge the HOA, I would go up to the parks, and it would be field day almost every weekend when I wasn't doing something else. And then we moved, and we bought a house, and we were told that there was no HOA restrictions on antennas, and lo and behold, when we move in, they give us a second set of rules that said the same thing. The nice thing about the Buddipole, though, is that I would mostly be working ham radio on the weekend. And the HOA company, the management company, didn't work on the weekends. And so people would call up on Monday and complain, and the HOA would come out and they wouldn't see any antenna, and they would go away and tell those people they were crazy, and eventually they all gave up. But anyway, this is called Buddipoles on steroids because, for the most part, I wanted to have a Buddipole that could do everything in every band, and that I wouldn't have to worry about it. And I also actually left it outside most of the time. So we'll go through this. So first of all, what is a Buddipole? Now everybody thinks a Buddipole is an antenna, but it really isn't just an antenna. It's a system for antennas. And by a system, I mean it has a lot of different components. And those components can be homebrewed or they can be purchased. Pretty much everything that you might need can be bought. But they basically, it handles all bands, HF and VHF, and you can be configured as horizontal and vertical dipoles. You can be doing a pure ground mount vertical, so that you put it in the ground and then you just basically run radials and things like that. I use counterpoise myself. Inverted Vs, which are, I don't know necessarily why you would want one, but maybe if you're trying to do NVIS locally and things like that, an inverted V is a little bit better than a straight dipole. Let's see. A half quad is pretty good, but a delta loop is even better. So you can do delta loops, and there's actually people who do delta loop Yagis with a Buddipole. I've seen those. You can do a two element VHF Yagi, mostly 10 meters and above. And you can do some other stuff with it, because it's pretty much, it could be pretty much imaginative any way you want to do it. So this guy, Bud Drummond, and I met Bud, and he's a great guy, and one time he and Gordon West and I were sitting in a bar and we're talking, and basically he's really super smart guy. He's not super smart being like a really engineering super smart kind of guy, but he's a super smart guy in the sense that if you give him a problem, he solves it. In fact, the time that he and I and Gordon West were sitting down drinking beer, was when he basically said, you know what, I think we got to do the buddy stick. So he comes up with these ideas on the fly, and he just goes ahead and makes them. So he invented the Buddipole back in 2000, and mostly it was just PVC and wire. And he refined the idea of how it was going to work, and for the most part, he put it out as a commercial product in 2000 itself. And since that period of time, basically that's his livelihood. He added the buddy stick in 2011. In 2010, he also formed this group, Caribbean Buddies. So if you ever want to do DXing in Caribbean and you take a Buddipole, you can pretty much join that organization. And other thing that Bud likes to tell people is he's always going to be in St. Lucia the first week of December. That's his annual trip, and he likes to go there the first week of December. So look for W3FF in the first week of December. And you'll see basically he's got a Buddipole that's up there in the background on a tripod. It's got some radials or some guy wires on there because if you look at the palm tree, you'll see it's a little breezy. And that's an important thing to note about the tripods because they are lightweight portable tripods. And you'll see basically here, this is pretty much, this is the stock Buddipole. It's got a small extension arm, the coils, and then it's got the small whips. And that was my first Buddipole as well. So the basic component parts are, by default, the original package was good for 20 meters and above. It was advertised for 40, but it was this little tiny sliver of the 40-meter band really right at the top of the general part of the band. I never got it to tune any further down below. So you're pretty much looking at about 7.45 and above. Probably not even 7.45, probably 7.8 and above. That was about the lowest I ever got it. And even then, it would be interacting with the ground like crazy. So it just fluctuated all over the place. The SWR would go up, and then it would come back down again, and these were major problems. It basically consisted of this guy. This is the original and my original Buddipole whip. And it's basically, what is that? It's 66 inches long. And you basically are going to put it on a coil. Like this. So this is the two adjustable coils, one black and one red, and the black and red was strictly, they used to be because the coils were different lengths. Now, when you buy a coil kit, they're all the same length, which is kind of weird. And then you had this extension arm here. And this is a 22-inch extension arm. And you'll have to kind of excuse me because I'm still one-handed here. I don't know if you guys know this, but the day after field day, I fell off a ladder and broke my arm off of a stool. So I got the cast off about 2.5 weeks ago, and I'll tell you, it still hurts like hell.
Now that's the story. In fact, Terry got angry at Emily because Emily failed to get a third satellite contact.
That could have been it, yeah. So anyway, so then this basically it becomes 1/2 of your dipole. The other part is this part. Where did I put it? Here it is. Actually, I'll use yours because that way I don't have to unscrew mine. This is called a Versatee. Now this is a new design. I didn't list it on there, did I? That's weird. Oh, because it's the next slide. But basically this is how you mount everything. So the antenna would then screw into the side of this, and then the other part would screw into the other side. Now you have a full dipole. You got a little thing here to mount on stuff. And this part here will screw into a normal 1-inch style PVC fitting, but the problem is that it's a little, those things are a little fragile, so I actually use a metal one. So I have a female, PVC female here, and it fits into that. They also sell an adapter that will screw into this and then go right directly onto a painter pole. I don't like that because I have some other things that I do with masts. So it's okay if we pass this around? So I'll pass this around for the people who haven't seen it before. And that basically should open up a little bit of the world of explanation of what Buddipoles do. I will point out to you, by the way, you'll notice that the terminals on that are really nice and red, and the terminals on mine look kind of pale and white, and that's because they're not UV coated. So keep in mind that Buddipoles are not meant to be kept outside year-round, even though I did that in California. Okay, and by the way, if you decide that you want to build one yourself as a do-it-yourself project, you can find lots of plans for them over on the internet. So my Buddipole, I bought it off of Craigslist. A guy at the University of Berkeley, University of California in Berkeley, had it for 125 bucks. He had all these pieces plus the rotating arm kit, which is here, and I'll get into this a little bit later. But I'm borrowing John's because I stupidly left my box of stuff at home. But basically, this is what a rotating arm thing looks like. So you can put the arm in there and then you can move it around and rotate it. We'll explain a little bit more about that. And then so I added extended 10-foot whips, which are these guys. These are, I hope this one is a good one. These guys get longer and longer. And the reason I bought the longer ones is I got tired of having to change the coils all the time. At anything above, at that time I was pretty much working a lot of 15 and 10 and 12. 12 being probably my favorite band of all. But I like anything above 20 meters works for me. So I'll put this out here, and maybe what we'll do is...
Why do you like the higher frequency bands?
Because there's no idiots up there. They can't figure out how to work up there. So for the most part, they're all sitting on 40 meters because they don't have to worry about changing their antenna at all. And so yeah, I don't how would you say it? I don't tolerate fools well, and so I spend as little time on. Can I borrow your other coil?
Yeah.
You're making me feel bad.
Well, it's not so bad down in the extra part of the band, but in the general part of the band, it's like CB, and it's the same thing with 20 meters. It's not so much that there are fools there as much as all there are nets, day in and day out, and people talking about religion and politics, and you know, it's just discouraging.
I mean, for a second,
I've noticed
just put the extender into perspective for us. So now, is that an item you can order from them, or you fabricated this on your own? Or
The extenders? No, the extenders are you buy, they come with the basic kit, or you can buy them individually, and I'll go into those in a minute.
Well,
But-
the extra long whip doesn't come with it.
The extra long whip is an option. And by the way, you can buy all the parts for a Buddipole individually. You don't have to buy the entire kit. So for example, if you don't want the fancy bag and you don't want the basic whips, you just buy all the parts and get the longer whips. So now, we've got some serious stuff going on. Keep forgetting I can't twist with this arm.
What do you want me to do?
No, it's okay, I got it. Okay, so now if you look at the difference between these guys, we got some serious stuff happening here. And now, believe it or not, we can get into a good part of the 40-meter band, which is a real nice thing to do. So, so basically, then, the Versa T, the original T, which I don't have, didn't have this part on top, but it was missing one other thing, is it didn't have these little holes. And these little holes are important. The original rotating arm kit, which I'll get into how that works in a minute, the rotating arm kit had to have friction to hold the antenna at different angles. If you wanted to go vertical, if you wanted to go horizontal, if you wanted to do an inverted V like this, it would basically require you to be torquing on this nut all the time. And it was just friction. So they got the idea of drilling these holes, and then you could put this in here, and the holes are at, I think, 30, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 30-degree increments. And then you just lock it in place and it won't move, and it moves. And that's a good thing. But, two things. They should have made them metal. For one thing, it would have made a better electrical connection. But, you know, that's okay. It works most of the time. The other thing is it doesn't really handle big stuff like this. But if you're going to use the smaller kits, that's pretty good. The other great thing about the new Versa T, it's got this thing on the top, which the original one did not. The original Buddipole only allowed you to go side to side. You couldn't go vertical with it. And they put this on, and now you can go vertical. And then you can hook up a counterpoise on one side or put radials on both sides and just spread out. Now you've got a really decent vertical. And this works extraordinarily well for a lot of things. I replaced my coils in 2004. I also added this ballon because on 40 meters it stabilizes things a little bit better. This is called a triple switch ballon, and it's got 1-to-1, 2-to-1, and 4-to-1. Yeah. The only thing is it's limited to 100 watts, so you're not going to be putting that through your power amp. So why do I like my Buddipole? And I really do. I have to tell you, if there was one thing that got me jazzed about working HF, it was the Buddipole, because this was something that I could do. I could take it home. I could put it in the back of my station wagon. Actually, at that time, I didn't have a station wagon. I had basically a Volkswagen Rabbit. And I could go places with it. And the other thing I liked about it, it was easy to understand. It worked on any band, particularly the ones I really like, 17 and 24 being the ones that I really prefer. But, you know, or 17 and 12, rather. It was directional, which is nice, because if you've got a lot of noise, or if you're trying to get a little bit more oomph for one station, you've now got a true directional dipole, rotatable dipole. It doesn't normally need a tuner if you know how to set it up correctly. It's very easy to maintain, and it's not overly expensive. I would say since 2003, when I bought my Buddipole, I probably put, so I had $125 up front. I probably rebuilt it twice, but I probably, spent maybe $450 over 15 years. That's pretty good for something that gets a lot of abuse. And it does. I mean, for me, I'm pretty abusive with antennas, because I'm taking them up and down all the time. So this is what my Buddipole looked like out in front of my house in California. You'll see here, this was before I got more arms, but you'll see here, it's got the single arm here and the long whips and the coil. You'll also notice something interesting. You'll see that they're offset slightly. This dipole is not in line with the other dipole. And the reason is, when you have these guys, and you're doing them horizontally, one's going out this way, and the other one's going out this way. So it's slightly offset, but it doesn't matter because it's only an inch or two.
How does that height affect you?
Well, that's important. And actually, this is a good time we can talk about it. Here's the deal with Buddipole, however. Everybody knows that dipoles do what when you raise them up in height?
Lowering the radius.
Yeah. So, particularly if you have a house that's made of stucco, and you have slate roofs, and you have really crappy ground, by the way, where I lived. What happens is things could not always just behave like a normal dipole. So most of the time what happens with me is I tune it to where I want in the band on the ground. I raise it up, I see where it is in relationship. So maybe it went up 3 kilohertz, it went down 3 kilohertz. Usually not that much, usually it's only a couple hundred, well, sorry. Yeah, 300 kilohertz or more. And then I'd wrote down and I'd take that from the measurement I had at the ground level, and then I would adjust it from there, and then when I raised it up, the offset should be proper. So you're really bringing it up and down twice. So, and you'll see here, this is a square umbrella stand. That weighs about 4 times as much as this does. But that's because I'm using this guy. And this guy is that mast.
Oh, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah. This guy is basically 25 feet long by the time you get it all up. Maybe 22. But, and you'll notice I did a bad thing. So, this is all brown, and that's from water. My soil there was so hard, it was like concrete.
They use jackhammers.
They had to use jackhammers to put soil pipe in around the back of my house to keep it from flooding. And so the funny thing was that you get out there and you sprinkle a spot of water and you take, 1-inch electrical conduit, and you get the nice people at Ace Hardware to sharpen the one side edge of it for you real good. And then you pound it down into that wet soil that you've been wetting for about a day. And then you wait about 2 days and it's all desiccated and dried out. And literally it was concrete. I mean, this stuff was that bad. So this, literally, the thing I forgot to do is I should have drilled a hole so that when it did rain, that the water would all come out. So I come out there after about 2 weeks not using it, and I go to raise the antenna up, and I hear, and I'm sucking all this water up the column in the middle. And then I said, well, gee, how come it got all brown? And then I raised this part up. Is it this one or this one? One of these guys. No, it's this one here. Because they're nested.
Oh, wow.
No, it's not that one. It's one of these. Huh, maybe it cleared itself up. Anyway, it was acting like a battery, basically, is what was happening. And so one of these is really, at the bottom, is pretty messed up, and then it's all, oxidized, and then ones next to it are fine. But of course, that's on the outside, not the inside, so it's kind of weird. But that's this mast. And then you also can have a painter pole. Painter poles are kind of cool. It's not as tall as the other one, but it still gets you pretty good. And if you're working at like 15 meters, well, really 12 meters and 10 meters, this is more than enough. But it'll do okay on 15 as well. So these are my masts. This is also a mast, but I'll tell you about this in a little bit. So when you buy a Buddipole, they give you this chart. I would say it's an okay chart. You can use it, but would also say, please don't use it. Get an antenna analyzer. And the reason you really want to use an antenna analyzer is because it'll allow you to get exactly where you want to go. And if you do have a tuner with your rig, then you're good for the whole band. I mean, it's going to be right smack in the middle, and you're never going to lose out. You'll see it says red side and black side, and that's because you have these guys. And the coils have these little paint marks, red and black. And basically you have leads, so you know how that works. These guys here, you loosen up and you move, and if you can see, I'll pass this around actually. You'll see here, there's paint marked there, but more importantly what you're going to see is that these are actually grooves, so you can stick these little coil clamps in between, and it's a pain in the butt sometimes. I'll do the best to get them all the way out. And then you screw them back down again, and that's how you move them. Now there's guys who have taken and put little, the little test lead clamps and do that. My solution was a little different, however. I figured out, okay, here at my house, and this is the bands, so I spent a lot of time putting it up and changing it, and I bought a whole bunch of these things, different colors, red, green, blue, yellow. And I just left them on there so that if I had to change band, I knew exactly which thing to go into, and then I also knew, how much of the whips to put out. So there's a lot of different ways that you can play around with it, but I like having lots of them pre-calibrated, so at least I know I'm in the ballpark, and then once I have the coil adjusted correctly, I can fine-tune everything with the whip. Whereas I know I used to work HF with this guy. He's a real good friend. I'll pass this around so everybody can see it. And he had just the opposite thing. He would actually put the whips out full length and then start changing the clips, the cue on the coil. So I guess different strokes for different folks. To me, it's a lot easier to do this.
Do I gather that there's a black side and a red side and they're not symmetric?
Right,
That's
right. Weirdly enough, mine, for some reason, are. I don't know why. Maybe they sent me two of the same ones or not, I don't know, but, because I just bought the cable. I didn't buy the complete kit, but my original ones were just like these. They were not symmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
These are, the ones I have now are completely symmetrical. Doesn't bother me because I'm using an antenna analyzer, so I don't have to worry about what's on which side. But you can see here, it'll tell you, whether or not you have to use the coils, how many whip sections to put out, and then what tap to use and what color on the coil that you're going to actually tap it out at. So you see here, green, green, red, blue, black, black, over here. Don't believe it. This number here, see it says blue 15, black 6, black 6. That's only for guessing kind of thing. And I really know that. So my advice is always use an antenna analyzer. They actually sell a nice little tiny portable one. Do you have that one? Or do you have?
I have the Ortac, but that's not sold anymore.
Right.
Something out of production.
Okay. This is an MFJ. I bought this 2003. So works just fine for me.
This was the Ortac Research antenna analyzer, 2 through 30 meters.
Yep.
2 through 30 megahertz. Nice little portable thing as compared to the MFJ. Takes one 9-volt transistor radio battery instead of the 10 or
The 10, yeah, the
or whatever
double
it
A's
is,
that
double
this
A's
takes.
that thing takes.
That's the one
Um,
thing, this weighs a ton.
Really?
But this goes up to, this one goes up to VHF. I wish I had up to 2 meters.
This one, really nice, but they've gone out of business.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
And you'll live a lot longer as a result.
Yeah,
That's a highly controversial piece of equipment.
Yes.
You're good with equipment. I'm not.
okay, so here's the Versatile. We talked about this. The main thing to notice is the holes and the 3 things. So vertical is one place, then you have, you can put ground on either side if you're using a single counterpoise, or both sides if you're trying to lay out radials. And if you're going vertical, but for horizontal dipoles, you're going to use the 2 sides. And that's pretty much also if you're using the rotatable arms. So here's a let's have a little quiz. So let's say if you wanted to have a inverted V, how would the antennas be sloped from the center of the mast?
That back up with
Yeah, 45 degrees in which direction?
the down,
Down. Yes. How about a V?
up, right?
Yeah, same thing. How about a vertical dipole? How would you do it?
Straight up.
No, one up, one down.
Oh, yeah, from the V.
Yeah. And then also, here's a really good one. How about a directional vertical dipole? So directional dipole that is, a vertical dipole that is directional and it's tilted like this. And the reason it's tilted like that is, you know, you're basically trying to make energy flow in one direction rather than omnidirectional. You're basically using the ground as the other half of that dipole. And that's going to sound weird. You're going to say, nobody ever needs to use that. But there is one case when you would use it. And that is for a Mode A satellite, which is on 10 meters.
Yeah, okay.
And it works like a champ for that. And we talked about the coils. You can see here that they're basically, the standard ones are used for 40 to 10 meters. Now, there are some optional coils. I don't happen to own any of them, but there's a mini coil, and that's the same as the buddy stick. The buddy stick basically has this. It doesn't have the side parts. And you put the dipole, the antenna itself on top, slam this down onto a tripod, and it's got a little thing off to the side for ground. And it has this little mini coil that basically sits about this high. And I don't have that one, but they're there, and it's really good if you're doing backpack QRP or something like that. They have a low band coil, and that's a big sucker, and that will go down to 80 meters. And both of these coils are really best for verticals. They can be used for horizontal dipoles, but only if you get the real lightweight hardware in the case of the mini coil, or with the low band, you're going to have to be real careful. Very high Q coils, both of these. So the bandwidth is going to be very, very narrow. And for 80 meters and 40 meters, you have to really get this guy, this balun. Now I left mine on all the time, and I just, usually had it set to 1-to-1, unless I was going to 80 meters, and then I went down to 2-to-1 because I had much bigger hardware. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. And for 80 meters, instead of getting the big low band coil, I just used the two normal coils together. And believe it or not, it was only about 1.5 coils the way I had things set up. Whip antennas, they come in 3 sizes. So I showed you the small one, that's the standard. The featherweight one that they make for the buddy stick is 6 by 13, but it's very, very lightweight. And then the long one you see is 6 by 21 inches. They make shock cord, military shock cord style antennas now. The lightweight ones are 3 to 7 21-inch sections, and you go on their website and you basically tell them how many sections you want. They're very lightweight, and they're not bad though. And then the mini ones are 5 to 9 21-inch sections. Then they have this new thing that they just came out with not too long ago. It's called a hybrid, and it basically allows you to have this big section of rigid shock cord, and then you can plug a whip antenna into the end of it. So you can get some pretty heavy duty stuff.
So I never heard of a shock cord.
Okay, shock cord is,
Is that similar to the tent thing?
Yes.
yeah, like tent poles that you put, and then you put the tent poles together, and then, you take them apart and then you fold them over for
Like a bungee almost.
yeah, it's almost like having a bungee cord run down the middle of an antenna, but they clip into each other instead of being screwed into each other.
You can be shocked. Or like,
No, no.
By shock cord, he's talking about an elastic band that goes down the middle of the tubes. You pull it
Yeah.
apart and then it folds up.
Yeah.
so why did they get the name shock? Somebody's last name?
No, I don't know. It's a
No,
military
the shock
thing.
cord was invented for entirely different reasons. Melissa, I think, just extrapolated the nickname for this use.
Yeah, it's probably,
Continue, Emily.
yes, it's something like that. Something like that. And I don't have any of the shock cord antennas or the hybrid, but I'm seriously considering that I might buy the rigid before next field day, the rigid one. So the extension arms are used to extend the coils outward, and that's because you don't want the antenna, the coils right at the bottom. But for the vertical, you're going to basically do the opposite. You're going to put the coil at the bottom, and there's a very good reason for that. The reason is, if you're putting your vertical up in the air, so let's say it's like this, you still want to be able to adjust the coil, because you're pretty much going to leave the antenna fully extended all the time anyway, and you're going to adjust with the coil rather than the antenna itself. So that's one of the reasons you do it that way. But otherwise, the coils come on the outside. Now we're going to go back to my big guy, and I'll show you why it's on steroids. They came out about 5 years ago with larger extension rods. Let me put this on here. And now you have a really big antenna. And it works really well because I can get down to 20 meters without the coil. Almost. I can get to the high part of 20 meters. And so that's pretty good, but it's very heavy. However, when I did an 80 meter vertical, that's a pretty good sized vertical antenna. Now I moved the cable, the coil was actually down off of this first extension. But now we're talking some really serious stuff. And then you got a 64-foot counterpoise, and now you've got a really serious vertical antenna. And you're just adjusting the cue to match and tune it. And it was good for about, I'm going to say, about 50 kilohertz of bandwidth on the 80 meter band. It wasn't too bad, and it tuned up pretty stable compared to some of the other things that I tried, like the 40 meter dipole that wasn't very stable.
Could you please comment again on what you used as a counterpoise?
So, I can, yeah, in fact, I had wanted to bring it, but, so what I did for counterpoise, you ever see those spade crimp connectors that, you have a spade that goes into this other little thing, and you can join wires up like that, and it's popular for like speaker wire and stuff. I made different lengths of that for every band from 10 meters. Is yours, well, this is basically what the counterpoise looks like. John's is not tunable, this is just a standard length.
Yeah, it's
But then-
tunable just by wrapping.
By wrapping it around. Mine basically was that I had different lengths of wire, and I would just plug them in to make the counterpoise longer depending on which band I was on.
Just lay them on the ground?
Yeah. Pretty much that's all I ever did.
Technically, counterpoise should be above ground.
And it was about 2 feet above ground, actually. Yeah. So figure, how can I say? So here's where I had my mast mounted, my vertical mounted, and then basically the counterpoise was actually, believe it or not, tied to my redwood fence. So it just kind of sloped along the ground. But,
Was the counterpoise just a single wire, or did you have several of them?
no, just the counterpoise is only a single wire.
Okay.
But it has to be the same length. It has to be basically the bandwidth that you're working. Whereas radials, you know, like radials, you put a whole bunch of radials out, and I think, what's the rule on radials? Eighth of wave? Is that, Terry, do you know?
Sorry, go ahead.
Ground radials, eighth wave is the minimum.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can go as low as an eighth of a wave for ground radials, but you have to have all of them. Whereas the counterpoise, you're going lengthwise, and you'd only need one. You could use two, but the main thing is you have to tune it. And I tuned mine by just changing the electrical length. I don't use it very often in that configuration, but I plan on doing it more, and that's where this will come in. Basically, I built a little adapter so that I could plug the coil and a whip into this guy. But it's not this guy in particular, but you could certainly use this guy. But they have a different thing that basically is very similar to this. I guess you could use this one too, why not? The heck. And I just had a little spot here to hold where the little clip things go in. So now I've got this, and it's on the inside, and then I have a screw that screws into it to screw it in tight. You jam it down into the sand at the beach, you're on your ground and throw it out in the ocean, and now you're doing beach, doing beach QRP. So this is pretty good for just working off the beach or stream bed or any, lakeside or something like that. Works like a champ. Plus you're dealing with a very lightweight antenna.
The only problem is that nothing keeps this from falling out.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I have them in plastic bags, 'cause there's nothing that holds this in here.
Yeah. I keep mine in a box. I bought extras of those washers because I lost one once. Okay. So the rotating arm kit, we talked about that already. And the directional vertical, like I say, is good for 10-meter satellites because you're basically taking this vertical, here's a center-fed dipole, turning it like this, and now you're basically following the satellite, or you can tilt it up as the satellite goes overhead if it's a slow mover. For AO40, that's pretty much what I used because AO40 moved across the sky so slowly, all I had to do was about once an hour go over there and move the arms a little bit. So that worked pretty well. So other accessories. Well, we talked about the triple ratio balun already, but they have lots of different masts, and you saw that one picture of Bud. Let me go all the way back up there. You can see this is one of the masts that they sell, and but you'll see that he has to definitely, it's not stable enough to use without having guy wires. So for field day, make sure that you got space if you're going to use that. They also don't go up that high. They only go up about 10 feet, if that. I think it's about 10. Oops. Here we go. Counterpoise, those are so easy to make, it doesn't really make much sense not to make your own. All you need is a tape measure and a bunch of wire. The counterpoise screw adapter, now one of the things that I did buy, even though I didn't really need to, is they make this really nice screw-in adapter to hold the counterpoise to the to the Versatee. And the reason I bought that to use was it has a little arm, stainless steel arm, that allows you to tighten it down. Whereas if you were trying to make it yourself, you probably wouldn't be able to do that. You'd probably be using some kind of a knurl or something. But this guy here, oh, you have it?
Yeah.
Or is that the one you made?
I made this myself.
Yeah, John made one here.
So it's something I found in a in a store, in a hardware store, it's thicker here, thinner there.
Yep.
So that part screws into the
Here.
extender or the coil. Oops.
Right there. Yep. And then you just hook the wire.
And then this piece connects on, and then you have this little
Yep.
piece that screws on.
Yep.
Come on, John.
So there's all kinds of different solutions for this. By the way, the little brass pieces that you see at the ends of these are pretty much lamp shade things. And the nice thing about those are they're brass. So for the most part, you're not going to, they're going to get stripped. You're not going to strip the more more costly parts. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, the counterpoises. So you can make your own counterpoise. You can do a single length, because you can also tune pretty much. If you have a long counterpoise, that's not going to matter too much. I just kind of like tuning mine because it makes it easier to tune the whole antenna system. Let's see. Extra banana plugs. So these guys here, unfortunately, they will compress over time, and they'll get loose, and then you'll start getting flaky. So I always keep a couple extra of these on hand. And then also I talked about the tap adapters. They're not very expensive. I think you get a bag of 5 for about $5, and so I have lots of those on hand. The IT adapter is the thing I was telling you about. It basically looks like 2 of these back to back, and with a couple of these guys, you put extension arms between them, and the one in the back you're basically using to support the reflector or the director for a Yagi, either 10 meters, 6 meters, or 2 meters. And so that's pretty easy to go. And the center T adapter. So painter poles usually come threaded with this little thing on top that's threaded up, and it fits on here. You can see where the original holes were. They just pop rivet them in there, and basically it sticks up, and that's what they screw paint rollers onto. So there's this thing here they sell, and it basically adapts the painter pole to the Buddipole. Problem with that is, again, it's plastic, and I found that they didn't, it just broke after a couple of times. So, but the other reason that I wanted to do this, come on, I use my masks for a lot of different things. So, basically, I just slide this guy over and insert the screw, and now I can put my Buddipole on here. I can pull it off later on when I get bored. I can put a 6 meter Yagi on it, or let's see, for those of you who were at field day, which I think is almost everybody, you notice I had the little PVC adapter for the arrow antenna, so I put that over it, and then also my other 2 meter antenna, 70 centimeters, I can just put them on and off. I have a 220. I used to have a 220 as well. So for the most part, I like this because I can move it around from pole to pole pretty easily. Just kind of slide it in there, and it's nice and rigid, which is really nice. And like I said, this part here is metal, so it's not going to strip out very easily. So just know how, if you're not going to use it a lot, you can probably get by with the plastic. If you're using it, like when I was in California, I would use it every day, and things break. You can go to the Buddipole website, which is just buddipole.com, and they have an accessories tag. And there's a lot of other stuff that they have. They actually sell little antenna analyzers. They sell power chargers for solar panels and other things like that. So, wait. Oh, I know what happened. So, what's not to like? Well, in my opinion, the Versatee can be a little bit stronger. And I mentioned before, I kind of wish that this ring here and all those little holes were metal. The reason is because they do strip out. Actually, I don't know if I can see it here. Yeah, you can see a couple of the holes here are a little bit elongated because the weight of the extra pieces that I have basically would start deforming it. So I kind of gave up on using the rotatable arm kit except for really lightweight configurations. The coils do break, and they get weak over time and will break. What I found with mine, see, John's are nice and new and they're nice and shiny. Mine were outside for a long time, and mine were basically, and it wasn't so much that I was keeping them outside all the time, but the thing is that they were out all day long, and for 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And over time, they got tarnished. And also, if I left it out overnight, it expanded out during the day. At night, it contracted down in the cold, and eventually they broke. The wires broke, and you can't solder it, so you got to buy a new coil.
Here in New England,
Yes.
coils and traps.
And traps
Oh,
always break. Yes, exactly. Okay.
Only during fire.
The brass interconnection screws get stuck. And by that, I don't necessarily mean that they, get impossibly stuck, although that will happen, and I'll tell you why. But sometimes these things, well, this one's in there pretty good, but you'll notice that there's only one on each end, and I've had them actually come off, and so you end up and you're looking at it and you're going, only to find out that it's like stuck in the coil or something. So you have to get out a pair, get some rubber grips and some vice grips and kind of pull it back out. And you'll see on this guy here, you'll see there's a little bit of the black missing where I had to use a pair of vice grips, because if you operate in warm to hot conditions, you may not be able to get it back and break it back down again because it expanded so much in the heat of the day, and it just gets so stuck. I was up at a park, and I literally had to bring this part of the antenna at least, because I couldn't get in the back of the rabbit. No, that wasn't it. It was some part of the antenna. I guess that was it. But I couldn't get it apart. It just was impossible to get apart. So, and the other thing is, of course, things are going to break, and that's to be expected because you're dealing with a portable system that you're going to take up, you're going to work, you're going to deploy out, you're going to do some stuff, you're going to take it all apart and then pack it up, and you're going to take it out and deploy somewhere else some other time, particularly if you're doing a rover, for a VHF contest, or doing a rover, or just even like going up doing mountain topping. You're going to be up there for a couple hours, you're going to tear everything down, and you're going to go someplace else. So I want to make a plug for this. There's a book called Buddipole in the Field, and it's you can either buy the book printed, or you can download it for free, and that's the website there. But if you look for Buddipole in the Field, you'll find it. And the thing about this is it's highly technical, and this guy did neck modeling on every possible configuration of the Buddipole. It's a really good read, particularly if you really like the Buddipole like I do. It's an essential read. Do I ever pay any attention to it? No. And the reason is, when I go out, I want to set up quickly, I want to get on the air, and I'm going to use my antenna analyzer. But in the back of your head, when you read stuff like this, it's going to stick. And so you know what the far field patterns are going to look like. And it's just kind of, eventually it sinks in and you're going to learn how to use it. But I don't go and take it out to the field with me and go, oh, I think I'd like to have this kind of a radiation pattern today. I think I'll set up this way. I basically just say, let's put up the dipole for this band and let's get on the air. But it's a good read, and I highly recommend.
And notice that call sign.
Yeah, N1, NE1RD. Nerd.
It's not an accident. That's a vanity call.
Yeah, and he's a really nice guy. He's probably going to be at Boxborough, and I'm looking forward to meeting him. Actually, I shouldn't use this one. I'll use the other one. Well, actually, I don't think we necessarily have to set it up.
Yeah.
I don't know, what time do we normally break up, by the way?
We'll break in another 10 minutes for a break, but
Okay.
this is a good time. I would like, can I show one other thing?
Yeah.
One other configuration that works very well is you take, this is just a kite winder, kite string winder, with 32 feet of wire.
Oh, yeah, and I've done this too. This is great. Thanks for bringing that up.
So you screw this in, I didn't bother to screw it in all the way. You screw this in and you run this out 32 feet or, then you're gonna have 32 feet on the other end. You can get on 80 meters, you can get on 40 meters as a dipole. You just obviously don't let this touch the ground. You have the wire up about 2 feet. It just works very well as a dipole antenna, horizontal dipole. And I ran a test from the top of the parking structure here in the government center, set up that way as an NVIS antenna.
Yeah, I was going to say,
low to the ground.
for NVIS, that's perfect.
And I got out fine. I got out to, you may remember a couple of months ago, Doug Sharafanovich was here, Douglas was here and pointed out that I'm the reigning NVIS champion in Connecticut, and I was operating from the top of the parking structure.
Yeah.
And I can hit all the Mars nets around here, which means that we have communication from government.
And it's a really good thing to practice as well. Not only just the antennas themselves, with the whips and all that, but if you've got a tree nearby that you can throw something up. So I actually have 2 sets of wires. One is my counterpoise. The other is a 36-foot long piece of wire that I use in that configuration that John was talking about. Or if I actually get on 80 meters as a vertical, I use them both for the counterpoise. So it's kind of a good thing. And the other nice thing about is if you get a bunch of guys who have Buddipoles, you go out and you have just like a day in the park with Buddipoles, and it really, you get to learn a lot from each other that way. And so if anybody else buys Buddipoles, make sure you let John know and I know. And what we'll do is, and maybe we can get some people from Gannark and we can have a Buddipole in the park day. I think it would be a lot of fun to do something like that.
When you're out in the
Ernest.
park, how do you
Right?
Yeah, how do you power up when you're out in the park?
How do I power up?
Do you use a battery or?
Yeah, so when I lived in California and I was going out to I was usually going up above the San Mateo Mountains. The San Mateo Mountains actually separate Half Moon Bay from the bay, from the ocean and the bay. And they run along Interstate 280 between San Francisco and San Jose. And I would go up into a park up there, and basically I would take a marine battery with me. Deep cycle battery is about this big, weighed about 100 pounds or something like that. But most of the time what I would do is I would just set up so the battery was still in the trunk of the car. And I got some real heavy 8-gauge wire to connect up to the rig. And yeah, if I could avoid having to carry that sucker around, I did, because it's way too heavy. I have always had a dream of buying an 897, a Yaesu 897, which has the battery in it, but still does 100 watts if you want it to. Most of the time when I was running battery, because I wanted to save battery and run all day long, I would typically only be putting out 40 to 50 watts. I wouldn't go full 100 watts. I think the 897 is, you have an 897 or, yeah,
897.
it's 20 watts on battery?
25 watts on,
25.
on the internal battery.
Yeah. So if I ever find one of those really cheap, I'm going to buy it. But you know, the funny thing about that radio is, once somebody buys that radio, they almost never sell them. They, you know, they don't. I mean, it's, and for home, I just, I hate to say it, but having had my 7600 now for a little over 4 months, I will never give up that radio. That radio is, it says me all over it. It's just a fabulous, and she gave it to me as a birthday present, so I have
What do you
to.
plunk down for 7600?
How much did I pay for it? 27 something.
Okay.
They had it on sale.
So it's still the same pricing category as the Pro 3 was then?
Yeah, yeah. So the base price of the 7600 when it first came out, well, actually up until like January, I think the price was $34.95, and then they dropped it $200 in February, and then they dropped it another $300 in April.
Why do you like it?
Why do I like it? I'll tell you. First of all, I like the fact that for RTTY contesting and CW contesting, I do not have to do anything. I push a button on the rig, or it has a keyboard and mouse interface. And I just press a function key, and it does all. You know, it'll send CQ and thank you 73 right from the keyboard, and that goes for CW, RTTY, and PSK. And you can have different messages for each of those modes, which is
So
really
you
nice
don't
too.
need software like FL Digi?
Nope. Don't need that stuff for anything except more. It does not decode Morse code, but it will decode.
The 3000 that I have also has that function.
Yeah, it's the 3000 is pretty much the same. And I almost bought a 3000, but I'm an Icon person. It's just, you know, once you get Icon in your blood, I think it's like addictive. You don't change very much. All my radios have been Icoms, except for a couple of HTs that were Yaesus. But I would make an exception for the 897. So I really like that. But the other thing I've been looking at is they have these little Chinese Fleet Power QRP rigs that are about like $150, and you know, they put out 5 watts, and there's like some CW ones, but they just put this one out. I think Waxen is making this one. It's also got single sideband, so, and that one's about $300. So that may be the other thing that I do, because that I could run off of a couple of Ryobi 18-volt lithium batteries, which would be kind of nice. But yeah, if you're looking for a new rig, the hot thing right now on the market is the ICOM 7300. Everybody's.
It's a lot of money.
Pardon?
It's a lot of money.
No, it's only $1,200.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking about the wrong one.
Yeah, no, it's about $1,200.
So the 7300 is the new portable or mobile rig?
Well, no, it's not. I don't think so. It's a software-defined radio. Yeah, it's software-defined radio, and it's got a touch screen. It's kind of. I thought about buying one, but there were 2 things that I didn't like about it. I didn't like the fact that it only had a single antenna connection, and if you have multiple antennas, that's kind of important. And then the other thing I didn't like about it is the touch screen is not so. If you have big fat fingers like I do, doesn't really work as well as you might think. So I like. I can remember this argument that BlackBerry people had about iPhones, is they couldn't stand the iPhone because they loved the tactile nature of the BlackBerry keyboard. And I guess even though I love iPads and iPhones, I just like having knobs and buttons to push. I'm not into touching everything in the world. So anyway, what I wanted to do was invite people to come up and fondle the stuff. And there was one other thing I did want to point out, and that is, if you ever go buy stuff, make sure you get these little knurls thing. They're additional $3, I think. These things make it so much easier to get everything on and off. Because if you don't put those on there, it's almost impossible to turn these and screw these in tight. So, and then here is a good example of how they break. So you'll notice I can't put this one back together again, and if you look at it, you'll see there's a little piece of metal that's kind of jammed in there to keep this upper part from, come on. Yeah. And you can see it's really tight because it's been deformed. But you can pull all this stuff out because it's bent over time. And this is how the failure mode of these whip antennas goes. And I think, yeah, there's still one more section in there someplace.
For those of you who have
There we go.
experience with our third tent and the leg that doesn't go in all the way, that's exactly.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember that from field day. That's the one that was over at the CW tent, CW. So anyway, you can come up and play around with these and get to feel them, and I guess we're going to take a break and get some water and stuff like that. And by the way, thanks everybody, you've been great.
Thank you.
Oh, and there was, wait, I have one more slide. In conclusion, it's a real terrific system for portable or home, HOA operation. Particularly if you got a vertical, it's really good because they can't really see it. So for a vertical that's up close to your house, it's perfect. It can be configured in many different ways to meet a lot of different operating needs. Always test your gear, however, before deployment, and remember to take it. Like I forgot to bring my little box of stuff, and thankfully John brought his. And then antenna analyzer, I cannot say enough for it. And by the way, you can find these usually on Craigslist and eBay pretty cheap, because people now want the little graphic multicolored display ones. I'm waiting for somebody to make one that plugs into an iPhone. That'll be the ideal for me. Of course, now you can't plug anything into an iPhone anymore.
I was going to say, it's kind of abandoned Levi's new mom.
And a lot of websites, if you don't want to spend a lot of money, a lot of websites have plans for home brewing. I know a guy, believe it or not, who built a 160 coil for this thing on 4-inch PVC. So it can be done.